I would like to invite back all the participants we've had, and Matej is going to open up and lead this discussion. So if all the speakers would be able to switch their cameras on, and we'll just spotlight you. We have Sheila, and then we also have, sorry, let me find you on the list. Do we have Mariana? Don't know if Mariana's still around. But Matej, perhaps I can hand over to you if you're okay to lead this discussion from this fantastic group of panel speakers, and thank you again to all our speakers for this session. Please do, to the rest of the audience, feel free to put your questions in the chat. I put one as a starting point, but I'm sure between the rest of the audience we have many more insightful and deep questions.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Josie, and thanks to all the speakers of this session. So I'm going to start it off. I would like to ask Sheila one thing. So you're studying embodied learning, right? And so nowadays, with the advent of these, large language models and ChatGPT, there is another kind of learning, which is that you can get your own tutor that will talk to you, right? So there is basically these language models should provide another kind of learning, which is definitely not embodied. Can you comment on the pros and cons of these?
So that's an interesting question, because I have to go back to when students were learning online during COVID, and we were trying to figure out whether or not learning online, in a Zoom situation could be embodied. And that's one example where the teacher would use gestures and, kind of talk to them with enthusiasm and sort of make it embodied. So we were trying to justify embodiment through Zoom, because teachers were really upset about it. And we were trying to explain to them that as far as the large language models, when we're looking at this new view of sort of a broader inclusive notion of embodied intelligence, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I had a long conversation with Michael Levin about well, if it's a language model, what is the environment? And he was talking about that I was too stuck again in my 3D mind and my human-centric mind, and talking about like anatomical space, linguistic space as environments for embodiment. So I thought I have to think a lot more about that. I don't have an answer for you, but I'm still exploring it to kind of justify, the idea of embodiment with the physical kind of body, in an environment, and certainly the environment could be sort of this virtual environment that we don't see. It's not a three-dimensional one, but I would love to have conversations with you guys about this, because I'm still trying to work it out. I don't think that answers your question, but it certainly poses a lot of questions.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Anyone wants to comment on that, on this kind of educational aspect of, ChatGPT versus embodied learning? No.
I can comment on that. Yeah. So as English is not my mother language, and so like ChatGPT definitely can facilitate the learning experience, especially for the students who are attending like lectures with language that is not their mother language. So that could be very helpful. So if ChatGPT or other like large language models can help them to do that, so definitely it will be a bad benefit. But also back to the embodiment, the core topic of the conference. So I believe through embodiment, so we can have something else. So for example, here we can always see vision. So we may have these haptic devices. So this has been covered by other speakers as well. If we have haptic devices that can improve the engagement of the students, that can help.
Yeah, I agree with that. Totally agree with that.
Right. Yeah. I guess it would be also a question of costs, right? Anything that will be physically embodied will be expensive, right? Like the haptic device is not a cheap thing. So, right.
Yeah.
Okay. I have another question for Andres. So, when I was working at the AI lab, there was this reservoir computing with Helmut Hauser and Kohei Nakajima, like octopus arm computing, some, dynamical systems. So, as I understood, that's something similar to what you do, right? In a way.
Well, yes, I didn't go into the details of the system that we have that behaves as a reservoir computer, but yes, we're looking into that. So let's say that in our work, we're trying to we envision embodiment in a more literal sense in a substrate. How can we generate, for example, something like a reservoir computer, or even a simple type of neural network? We have done that with the Hopfield networks, embodied that on a tactile system to generate and store memories in the material. So trying to, and when I say in the material, I should be more precise, into a mechanical property of the material. Ultimately, the vision that we are pursuing is trying to embody relative complexity of behaviors. I mean, I think at the beginning there was the discussion about the more complexity in the system, then the more behaviors you can have, and in a way, I kind of see also our own intelligence in that way. I mean, our brains are extremely complex, but I think that ultimately they have a certain limit of possible states. So then, if one can encode into a physical substrate a significant number of possible states that depend on the history, that reset themselves, that interact with the environment, then one can generate a certain level of embodied intelligence that may be interfacing, that may serve as an interface between the complexity of the real world, and then connect to maybe even more complex forms of intelligence that are embodied in specific substrates, like chips or neuromorphic chips.
Right. So the discussions I've always had with Helmut and Kohei were, I was always wondering why having the body as a computer. So I think the body is here to produce behavior in the physical world, and we have evolved brains for the computation. So what is the benefit of computing something simple with the physical body itself?
Well, I don't think that our brain computes a significant number of our functions, right? There is a significant level of decentralization. And of course, in other animals like cephalopods, this is even done to a greater extent. So I think, I mean, the start of my talk was a little bit alluding to that fact that if we try to centralize learning by following the same approach, although that is changing, that has been used with large language models, where we just use all the available data and then try to abstract information out of that. That is going to be difficult to realize at a large scale, right? We would be able to make a number of robots that can learn from the environment, or systems that can learn from the available knowledge. But there are going to be some problem of scaling that. So my view on embodied intelligence is an attempt to offload and try to simplify a lot of that complexity, so that it can become scalable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. There's one question in the chat. I don't know if it's from Josie or if she just communicated somebody else's question. I wonder about the perspectives on the types of interactions for embodied intelligence. We have seen physical, emotional, and social. Can we consider them to be the same? So my first answer would be probably no, but I don't know. What do you think?
I would say
Yeah.
yes and no.
Yeah, I think no.
Yeah.
Yeah, for example,
Uh,
like, yeah, maybe, yeah, because since I talk about the social intelligence,
Yeah.
like social aspects, emotional aspects, I think to me it's quite difficult to understand, like, for example, social embodiment, like, emotional embodiment sometimes, because we can define like physical embodiment, I think quite straightforward, but like, how do you really define social embodiment or emotional embodiment? So which is we need to consider like different factors. uh, it is totally different system to me. So I think definitely we have a gap. I mean, we have differences between these three systems, like physical, emotional, and social. At least like social and emotional, they are quite close, but still physical is like totally different system, I think. I mean,
I'm not sure I agree that they're different systems. We just finished a project with embodied therapy.
mhm.
And thinking about, mind, body, environment, going back to sort of meditation and those type of things, you can change your, understanding of yourself. And so I don't think that they're that far apart. But I understand the question seems to be very separate because physical from emotional, but
Yeah.
emotion is physical. It's a physical reaction to, in some way, either, cognitively, physically, within the environment. So I really think that they're not that separate. I think that emotion is embodied. Emotion is embodied in ourselves and in our interactions. It's extended to others. I mean, I can understand that it being embodied, definitely.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah,
so
I would say,
So, on the
yeah,
social part, there are, for example, ants and other examples in insects where they are behaving very simply, but when they interact with the complexity of the environment, then different collective or social behaviors emerge. So I think that the intelligence can also be embodied in the interaction between agents.
Collective, right? Collective.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be human-like. I mean, I don't know how one can study the emotions in insects, but it's a collective intelligence that is certainly can be embodied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also sometimes this physical like contact or physical stimuli could be turned into social. So for example, like tasks. So in the social interactions, soft tasks can be interpreted as showing welcome. So this can be turned into a social signal. So to me, sometimes it
Yeah,
could be
it's
the same.
combination.
Yeah, it's combination. Yeah.
And certainly in the educational environment, we have evidence from mirror neurons and the motor cortex that when a teacher, kind of demonstrates something, uses gesture, the embodiment is imitation. And if they just hear certain words, like we talk about, hearing the word kick, that the motor cortex is activated. But certainly the mirror neurons, in terms of imitation, gestures, those type of things, that's sort of a collective kind of embodiment as well. Yeah, I think that you're on the right track there.
okay. So I'm looking at the schedule, and I think we should be wrapping up for the coffee break. I don't know, Josie, what do you think?
Yes,
We need a coffee for embodiment.
exactly. Physical, emotional, social stimuli. Chemical stimuli as well. So yes, so thank you very much to Mate for leading this session, and thank you very much to all the speakers. I think it's really interesting that the different aspects of embodiment you focused on, and also these I think this last question was quite good in terms of it touched on the similarities and differences between all the different perspectives you have on interactions and embodied intelligence. So thank you very much for your inputs. So yes,